viewers, good morning to each and every one of you tuning in not only locally, but a special hello to our viewers across the region. Thank you so much. I'm Ron Grant. You're watching 284 Media out of nature's little secrets in, of course, the beautiful British Virgin Islands. As the global pandemic, that is COVID-19, continues to rock countries all across the world, we here in the Virgin Islands continue to grapple with the idea that this pandemic will be around for some time. For many, finding creative ways of living amongst COVID-19 appears to be challenging without isolating oneself from our society as well as our children from a pandemic that is inevitable. Apart from our hospitality industry and overall economy, one of the hardest hit areas is education and the overall well-being of our children, the ones we call our future. This pandemic affects everyone, for our students, our teachers, and of course parents. Now viewers, by no means is this a walk in the park. This is a health crisis with many moving parts that affects all facets of human life. Joining us this morning is Miss Sandy Underhill, former educator and principal of the Elmore Stoutt High School and CEO of recently launched UBITS, Underhill's Business Image Development Services Consultancy. She is a lifelong educator and community activist who is here to share her thoughts and ideas on educating students through a global pandemic. Under her leadership, she has seen the Elmore Stoutt High School through some of its toughest times, particularly the floods and hurricanes of 2017. Presently, she is undertaking her doctoral studies in organizational leadership with a concentration in change management and writing her dissertation on crisis management. It's an in-depth conversation that you don't want to miss. Stick with us. You're watching 284 News. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
Is business slow? Cash flow down? Hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media at cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works.
Viewers, welcome back. You're watching 284 Media. Miss Underhill, welcome to 284 Media. Thank you so much for joining us and accepting this opportunity to share your thoughts.
What a pleasure it is to be here with you, Ron. Thank you so much for having me.
You're most welcome. Hindsight is 2020. We're going to get right into the matter. In order for us to really move forward, we have to go back. So let's take a step back for a moment to the events of 2017 at the ESHS institution for which you were the principal at the time. You navigated the school through those very tough times. Before we get into the conversation, what lessons would you say were learned through the floods and hurricanes of 2017? What was that experience like?
Wow. First of all, I would say it was an opportunity for me to test my leadership skills and abilities. I can remember having my first meeting. Educators were asked to meet at the Save the Seed with the minister then, Mr. Walwyn, and he'd given us a mandate to reopen schools for senior students by October 5th, I believe. And I remember walking up to him after the meeting and saying, "Sir, I don't think I can handle this one." And then he whispered in my ear and he said, "Girl, go from here, you got this." And with that, I quickly realized that, you know what, it's up to me. You asked the question about what did I learn from this. What I learned is that everything we are and everything we do, everything that we stand to accomplish is about people. As I looked at it, as I recall and I reminisce back on the infrastructure, having watched almost 8 acres of Elmore Stoutt underground, except for what we call the L-shaped building. The devastation was immense. And no one knew, students, teachers, parents, nobody knew what the future of education, particularly as it relates to Elmore Stoutt High School, nobody thought that we would be able to start school in such a short period of time. What I did learn is that once you put your mind to it, with the right people's skills,
right,
the right set of talent, also from the leadership standpoint, you have to make sure that you identify what the resistors are, what the needs are, and you have to put measures in place to support your staff. And so what I realized that all in all, it came down to people. And I will say as much as the 2 years that we spent at the Clarence Thomas building the 2 years from 2017 to 2019 saw the school's highest academic achievement. And that lesson learned, again, to reiterate what I said, is about people. Lack of infrastructure, lack of resources, the toughest times ever, and still coming out on top in terms of academic achievement.
Wow. Now, hurricanes and floods are different, of course, from a pandemic. 2017, as you mentioned, was about infrastructure, natural disasters that really tore apart the infrastructure, while 2020 is a health crisis still affecting education. Are there any common threads in how you would address the current situation based on your previous experiences?
Common threads, again, boils down to people. We have to be able to address the workforce, your employees. And I think that's one of the critical elements of putting a plan into place. We have to identify the workforce, we have to identify their needs, because they're the ones that are going to be providing the services of whatever plan. One of the main things that come to mind right now of concern to me, based on my own experience with managing the crisis of 2017, is to ensure that the educators themselves are provided with the support that they need. And I don't just mean physical resources. I'm talking about from the emotional, mental aspect of it. I am worried and concerned about their mental health. I do still have friends and past colleagues who would express to me that the school year hasn't begun yet, and they're very wary going into this school year. So I am concerned. Again, it comes down to people, identifying people, making sure that people, both internal stakeholders, which is your students, teachers, parents, external stakeholders, are involved in whatever plan that you may want to implement going forward in crisis management. Again, always comes down to people. They are your stakeholders. They are the ones that should have a say in making sure that we mitigate any pandemic, any crisis, short-term and long-term.
Okay. Now, this week marked the official opening of the 2020-2021 school year. This school term will be a lot different with the announcement of full online learning for the remainder of 2020. Now, when we look at education amidst COVID-19 and the fact that for the remainder of the year, we're going to be online strictly, that's both public and private schools, what are your thoughts as we approach this new era?
Well, let me just say that, the pandemic was something that nobody expected. And by no means was any government in any part of the world prepared to deal with the vastness of this pandemic. And I will say that it's a tough call to make. And I don't believe that there's a wrong decision. I do believe in the idea that we must have a plan. And the plan must also have a contingency, meaning that while we are saying online learning, we also must have a rollout of something different. I also want to mention that one of the things I am also concerned about, and even in talking to people daily, and hearing their thoughts and their ideas, we all are aware by now that COVID is here to stay. It's not going anywhere.
Right.
And one of the things in planning, on the government level, management level in organizations, but now that we're talking about schools, administrative level, we have to understand that it's a change of behavior is where the conversation needs to shift to. Okay. We have to be able to change our behavior, and I think that the focus in planning should be on how do we shift from our normal way of doing things to a new type of behavior. And as I'm speaking, I'm thinking, what better way to do this than through education? Because if you are dealing with any change crisis management, what you learn, and even this comes out from my doctoral studies, is that you have to be willing to adopt new measures on a fly. So I'm thinking, even within the curriculum of school, that you change let's say the first 10 minutes of any class, whether it's science, math, English, whatever classes, primary school level, secondary level, tertiary level, and you educate on changing the behavior to address the needs of COVID. So you work collaboratively with the health authorities to establish what that behavior is. World Health Organization being the leading authority, of course, and I'm sure that's where our local health department is getting their information from. So we work collaboratively. Everything is a collaborative effort. We work collaboratively with them to establish what our new curriculum is going to be like and use the first couple of minutes of class, whether it's online, whether it's a combination of online and the blended learning. But what I will say is that we need to understand that COVID is not going anywhere. What has to change is our behavior. So we need to be looking very quickly in the short term to changing from online to maybe a combination of online and a hybrid on a blended system. But the conversation has to shift because we cannot continue to operate in this fashion. And I would also say this, I'm very concerned about some of the threats that the online system presents. For example, special education. These children are in a category where their academic success depends greatly on the physical interaction of a teacher. I am concerned. I know that the Ministry of Education, they're probably working really, really hard on a daily basis to ensure that these issues are being addressed. But those are the things that come to mind. Attendance also comes to mind. Attendance was never perfect, particularly at Elmore Stoutt High School. And now that you have students learning online, attendance, I can imagine, is an issue. Another issue is the support of parents. Parents themselves are facing their own personal anxieties, stressors, and so forth. Some of them are not working, have been laid off, and so forth. And I can tell from my own personal experience. I have a 19-year-old son who just graduated in Atlanta. And the Lord would have it, God would have it, that I happened to be there accidentally because of COVID, stuck in Atlanta, but grateful because I had to wake him up every morning, 18 years old in 12th grade. Graduation is on the line so that he can do his work. And I'm just saying, if that was my experience, can you imagine what the experience is of other parents? So there's a lot of factors we have to take into consideration when we are implementing a plan. Implementing a plan should always begin with a SWOT analysis of your strengths, your weaknesses, what opportunities you stand to achieve, and so forth when we are implementing any plan. And some of the threats I see right off the bat as something that we should all be very concerned about.
Definitely the word blended and hybrid is something that has been thrown around recently. We have heard persons somewhat mention or elate to the fact that they would have preferred a more different approach and perhaps half online and half in person. And I'm happy that you mentioned special education as well. We have a lot of students in the territory of the Virgin Islands who learn at a different level. They learn at a different experience in general. And we would like to think that they're doing their best online, but it does pose a challenge to most of them, as well as parents as well, particularly those who may not have the support that they need. Now, as we speak about students, I want to touch on teachers as well, educators who are going through this change as well of online learning. What are your thoughts on the well-being of our teachers and their teacher-student relation in general?
Well, okay, I sort of alluded to that prior, but
yes,
you can elaborate.
Mental health,
yes, for sure. And so again, because teachers are the ones in the education system who are charged with delivering the instructional program, we have to first start there with our teachers and ensuring that they have the supports that they need. When I go back to 2017 and in handling the crisis of Irma and Maria, I remember that one of the things that I did was we made contact with the outside health agencies, and even within our own system, the counselors within the Elmore Stoutt High School were on call for teachers to have initially mandatory sessions of counseling, and then eventually it was based on a voluntary needs basis. Something as simple as that goes a long way. Teachers get to vent, they get to talk, they have their own personal anxieties with respect to any crisis, and particularly now with COVID-19. We have to make sure that we are taking their well-being into consideration. In terms of the teacher-student interaction, again, I can speak for, again, my own personal examples. My daughter, she's 14, and I one day walked into her room in Atlanta and she was crying, and uncontrollably crying. And when I got to the bottom of it, this was while they were home learning at home before they broke into summer holiday. And what I understood from what she eventually said to me, it all boiled down to the social interaction. The social interaction, she's an A student, doing very well in school academically. but was missing her teachers and her friends. And it's not too often that you hear a 14-year-old say, I miss my teacher. And I can imagine that that is probably the sentiment of most of our students, most of our students here who probably took school for granted, who probably were late coming to school every day or probably had a few days in between where they didn't attend. And I am sure that right now they are missing that. And while I understand that their safety and their health and their well-being is of optimum priority, I will reiterate the point that I made previously that COVID is not going anywhere. And so we have to understand that it is our behavior that needs to be addressed, and the emphasis on any plan that we decide that we are going to implement, whether it's in the short term or in the long term, we have to understand that the focus has to shift on change behavior. Education is one of the platforms that I'm humbly suggesting that can be used in this regard.
Thank you so much, Ms. Underhill, for sharing those very personal experiences of what you yourself, with your very own kids, have experienced. Now, we've covered a lot as it pertains to education, and we want to first of all wish all teachers and students a safe and enjoyable 2020-21 school term. Before we segue, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we begin to close?
Well, I'd just like to join you in wishing all educators at this time a very fruitful 2020-2021 school year. I know that I have spoken to quite a number of my past colleagues and friends and wish them well. I know that y'all are engaged in a lot of training and online sessions this week, and I'm just going to say that my prayers, my thoughts and prayers are with you, because this is not an easy feat or easy task, and you know that my heart is education always. So peace and love to you all, and best wishes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time again. Before we leave, I have to ask you, the last time we saw you, you presented yourself as an at-large candidate in our most recent general elections. I have to ask, and you may not want to ask this question, would you consider running for public office again? And what are your thoughts generally on the present political climate and tone in the Virgin Islands?
Well, anyone who knows me on a personal level knows my passion. Passion for education first and foremost, passion for people, most importantly, the passion for the advancement of this country, heart and soul. I will not say no more politics, and I am going to leave that right there. Okay. I will not say no more politics. I am going to say that I'm sitting back very gracefully and humbly, observing, taking notes wherever I can. I am very much engaged in the political atmosphere, not just locally, but abroad, globally. I pay attention. I watch a lot of news. I watch the different dynamics. I also make a lot of connections and similarities in terms of comparisons to as small as we are compared to other bigger countries. And so I'm keeping engaged, and I'm also trusting in the Almighty God to lead me and to show me the direction He wants me to take.
And do you have any thoughts on the political climate presently as you observe and you watch, not only perhaps locally, but regionally as well?
What I will say is this. I am a person who genuinely wants to see the advancement of our beautiful British Virgin Islands. I'm watching what is happening locally, and by no means is our current situation with the pandemic an easy one to navigate. So in terms of the global atmosphere, I'm constantly watching. I watch a lot of Trump. I don't know what to make of so many things happening in the American climate when you're dealing with Black Lives Matter. You're dealing with, just recently, Donald Trump had a whole fiasco coming out with the fact that it's now been proven that he knew a lot more about the pandemic and its severity than he let on. Right. So it's quite a lot, and it's an interesting set of dynamics. But with respect to the local climate, I am watching on, and by no means is it easy to run a country, let alone run a country, given the current circumstances. So I just want to say that I wish everyone well. I wish everyone well, and again, I don't know where I fall into the whole spectrum, but if the opportunity presents itself, I would be open to it.
Well, thank you so much for being receptive to those questions, or the hard questions that usually persons don't want to answer. But before we go, since seeing you run for public office in the last general elections, what have you been up to?
Well, I've been working, doing two things. Working on my doctoral program. I am enrolled at Nova Southeastern in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And I just started my second year, about to begin my prospectus for my dissertation, which is on crisis management. Of course, I capitalized on the current climate and said, you know, what better topic to write on than what we're experiencing right now. Information is fresh. So I'm working on my dissertation as we speak, and also just launched UBIDS, which is a consultancy. UBIDS is Underhill's Business Image Development Services consultancy, and the main target or focus of that consultancy is in change and crisis management.
Wonderful. Well, we wish you all the best on your endeavors, and thank you so much once again for your willingness to come and have this conversation, very candid conversation here on education and the way forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Viewers, thank you for tuning in, but that's not all. Be sure to check out our website as well as our Facebook page and Instagram for your daily news updates. Of course, later on today at 6 p.m., my colleagues Kyla and Jovan will, of course, be bringing you some of the evening news. Some of the top stories we're looking at today have to do with the cries of the BVI business community as they continue to try to navigate through COVID-19. Is the UK reluctant to provide financial help to the BVI in these very crucial times? We sit down for an exclusive with a member of the BVI Teachers Union. We're going to be covering a lot of education this week as students are back to school. Not back to school, but the school term has officially been launched. So stick with us. Thank you so much again. Have a happy Thursday. I'm Ron Grant. You're watching 284 Media.